to welcome everyone out to the Barnstable Town Council meeting, January 19th, 2023. I'm the president, Matthew Levesque. And again, just like to, this is our first meeting of the new year. Just want to wish everybody a happy new year. And thank you for joining us this evening. And those who are watching on Channel 18, thank you for joining us as well. This meeting is being recorded, and I just need to ask at this point in time if anybody is recording this meeting to make your presence known. Okay, not seeing any. Roll call, please.
Councilors: Atsalis.
Here.
Clark.
Here.
Cullum.
Here.
Cusack.
Present.
Rapgrassetti.
Present.
Levesque.
Here.
Ludke.
Here.
Mendes.
Here.
Neary. Schnapp.
Here.
Shaughnessy.
Here.
Starr.
Here.
Steinhilber.
Here.
12 present.
Thank you. If we can all please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance, and please continue standing for the moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just want to continue to keep in our thoughts the conflict in the Ukraine and those who are suffering because of it. At this time, if we can have a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Thank you. May be seated. At this point in time, I'm going to come down front and make a special presentation. This is great about being in person again, is that we get to do fun things and recognize people who have served the community for a great number of years, not only on a personal level, but also on a board, committee, or commission, volunteering their time to help, in this case, preserve a place that they love. And that is not only the town of Barnstable, but specifically the village of Hyannis. So, if you could come forward, please, Mrs. Atsalis. So I'd like to present this award. Marina Atsalis was a founding member of the Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. This is also known as the commission that is the hardest to remember exactly all the words that are in the commission. But here we are again, Hyannis Main Street Waterfront Historic District Commission. And Mrs. Atsalis was a founding member of the board and served until 2019. And I just think it's overdue. And this is important to recognize your 20 plus years of service to our community and really helping to guide this commission to preserve really the authenticity, the specialness of Hyannis Main Street from a personal point of view. Actually, and so I present this award to you from the Barnstable Town Council and all those here in the town of Barnstable. So we really appreciate it. Is a token of our appreciation. So thank you. You may. But first, I want to say a few words. I appreciate you and the fact of and I'm sure you over the years it's always been all those boys, and I have the privilege of knowing your sons at different levels and different parts of my journey here in Barnstable, and they've always been friendly to me. They've always embraced me and tried to help me, and I'm sure that comes from you. And I so appreciate my relationships with them, and so thank you for that. You're very welcome. And now this is your opportunity to say something, address the public, if you want to address the council, and then I want to give the council a moment to recognize you as well.
Just a few, I promise, just a few words, not too many. All right. Okay. Thank you all very much for the recognition by the Town Council. I feel it is important that in accepting this honor, I would like to recognize so long ago the founding members of the newly established Hyannis Historic Main Street Waterfront District Commission. From the very beginning, the board members were a devoted group who gave of their time, knowledge, and goodwill. I was one of the lucky ones. They have been missed, and they are remembered. It is my hope that the members of the board continue to work in a cohesive manner that will benefit the Hyannis Historic Main Street Waterfront District Commission. Many thanks once again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And if you want to stay right there and give you a moment, I just wanted to give the council an opportunity to say something that they'd like. Looking to my right first. Anyone? Councilor Rapcasetti, please.
Congratulations, and thank you again for your years of service to the town. I want to say, too, that the Barnstable Historical Commission has presented you with a Preservation Award, and I think this recognition trumps that by far, but for all of your years of service, thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilor Rapcasetti. Councilor Lucky, please.
There could not be anyone more deserving than you. I know my mother knew you. I know you. Chris and Peter sitting there, we certainly know each other. My goodness, I mean, if any award was as well deserved, I mean, it just couldn't be. Congratulations. You're amazing. Your family's amazing. Your sons are amazing. Your husband was amazing. I just love you guys, and I love you, and thank you for everything you've done. Thank you so much for helping Hyannis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucky. Anyone else on this side? Moving on to this side. Councilor Mendes, please.
Congratulations, Mrs. Atsalis. What makes a community unique is not the boards and committees you serve on, but what you do for the youth. And you and your husband always welcomed us always into Charlie's. We used to all hang out there. And of course, who can forget about the Sunday the Turkey Gate football games at your place. A lot of fond memories, and thank you for being always so welcoming to all of us. Really appreciate it. And congratulations.
Thank you for that memory.
Thank you, Councilor Mendes. Are we saving the best for last? Okay.
I will be brief. Mom, you probably don't know this, but your service on the committee all those years was what motivated me to run for town council and be fortunate enough to be sitting here right now. So you may think it came from Dad, when he ran many decades ago, but actually you had as much to do with me wanting to get involved with the community, and I thank you for that, and I love you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next part of our meeting would be public comment. If you're here for public comment, we welcome you to the podium. You would have 3 minutes and to speak on whatever topic you like, and you just ask that you speak into the microphone and then sign in. So we might also have somebody remotely signing in, but I did want to give the opportunity for the public in the room to speak first. Anyone? Okay, not seeing any. I would ask if Director Poyon has anybody that'd like to comment remotely.
We do have one person remotely. Her name is Jane Ward, and I believe she's being sent over now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Ms. Ward, thank you. You may unmute. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for letting me address the town council this evening. My name is Jane Ward. I know a few of you, but not everybody. I'm a resident of Centerville. I live on Long Pond. I'm also a member of the Barnstable Infrastructure and Energy Committee, but this is my opinion that I'm voicing tonight. This is not something we're working on in the committee. And I know that you're going to be talking later this evening, particularly about how to pay for the comprehensive wastewater management plan. Clearly, we have a wastewater problem on Cape Cod, and rather than trying to just infuse my opinions into this, I want to just remind you of some wise words written by one of our wisest wastewater management experts on the Cape, George Heufelder, in a op-ed earlier this summer, July 31st in the Cape Cod Times. And the reason I want to read part of his op-ed is because he's calling for resources, advice, support for those that will not be served by the sewer project, those that will be struggling with either IA septics or looking for an easier way. He said, his title was, "We must help homeowners upgrade and maintain their septic systems." He said, "Wastewater is a problem to be solved on Cape Cod. We all know it. And a liberal estimate will be that at the very most, 30 to 40% will be served by the final centralized municipal treatment facilities. What about the rest? For the less fortunate majority, life will be different. They will all hope and pray that their on-site systems don't fail or be deemed inadequate. In addition to paying for the municipal treatment of others through the tax base, they will take loans, tap their reserves, possibly get some subsidy, and hope that this will be enough to keep their wastewater below ground level." And what he said later on in that op-ed is, "What we need is a robust system that meets the homeowner's need for financial relief, technical and logistical support in maintaining their systems, and assurance that as sure as the town will fix the sewer when it breaks, the town will assist the on-site system owner in some way when they are in difficulty with their treatment system." He said this is really, his final sentence is that this is a socially correct and right that we support the wastewater treatment efforts that will not be addressed by the centralized sewer. And I had this personal opportunity. My husband and I were really very pleased to be able to install an IA septic this summer called the FujiClean CRX, which addresses both nitrogen and phosphate removal. It's part of a grant. So we were given the unit, we were given some money to help us with the permitting and the installation costs. But even so, it cost us nearly $20,000 electrical. And halfway through the summer, I realized I was the general contractor on this project, which really influenced my learning curve. And I was glad to learn, but I didn't realize how much work it would be to me as a homeowner. The other very carefully done program that's been written and approved and then redone is the 208 report that the Cape Cod Commission, I think, first published in around 2015 or 16 and was approved by the state and the EPA. There's a significant amount of material in Chapter 5 of that report talking about both the innovative alternative systems that George Heufelder refers to, as well as eco-sanitation, waste reduction toilets, which are getting better and better as the months go by. And just ask President Cox at the community college if you want to know about a real cutting edge eco toilet. I'm just calling for you on the town council to please consider supporting options that may be better, maybe quicker to put into reality, and maybe more cost effective than the current CWMP, with a forecast of not really even serving everybody in the catchment area for 30 years and maybe 20 if the DEP changes it. But that's an awful long time. I'm not sure I'm going to be here to see that. But I think some of these IA opportunities and some of the eco toilets people could put into play and be pilot tested very carefully, as the 208 study suggests would be done. They could be done within a few years.
Dr. Ward, if you could wrap up, that would be great, please.
Yep,
Thank you.
that's all I'm saying is please consider having a very broad, comprehensive wastewater management plan that allocates resources to others besides those that are in the sewering plan. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for your service, Dr. Ward, and thank you for your public comment. Appreciate it. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Is there anybody else that is here to participate remotely in public comment?
There is no one else for public comment on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Anybody would like to respond to Dr. Ward? Council Lucky, please.
Jane, thank you so much for your comments. I think they're terrific, and I think all of us are focusing so much on the sewer plan, and I think we're going to get an update tonight on that we've lost sight of some of the folks that aren't going to be on the sewer. And I know my particular precinct, Precinct 3, probably the preponderance of the folks in there are not going to be on the sewer, including myself. I'm never on the plan. So I think your words are well taken, and it's something we need to keep in the forefront because there are quite a few people that are not going to be on it. So I really appreciate your comments, and it's something I'll certainly take to heart and think about, how we keep that in the forefront to help people who are not on the plan. So thank you so much for your comments tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Anybody else comment? Councilor Schnapp, please.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Ward, for bringing to our attention other alternatives to our pipes and pumps that we are, putting in the ground right now. And I know that, especially for areas that are out in Phase 3 that have ponds that have been endangered because of phosphorus, some of those, actually the system that you put in might be a way forward to try to help with the cyanobacteria and other things, because it's going to take a lot longer to get out there. So thank you for bringing that to us tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other comments on this side, response to public comment? Anybody on this side? Okay. Then at this point in time, I would close public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. And now it is time for Town Manager Communications. I'd like to welcome Town Manager Mark Ells to the podium, please.
Good evening, Mark Ells, Town Manager. This is my Town Manager update, and Happy New Year, everybody. Didn't get a chance last meeting to say that, so this is my update that will include from December 16th through this evening, January 19th. We're going to begin with Mark Milne providing us an update on fiscal year 2023 tax bills. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Mark Milne, Director of Finance, Town of Barnstable. So you've probably have seen the news, you've read the papers. This is not a phenomenon that's occurring just in Barnstable. This is something that's happening across the Cape, across the state. It was a hot real estate market in 2021, especially for residential properties, which resulted in significant increase in assessed values, predominantly for residential properties. So I'd like to illustrate how the factors that go into increasing an individual's tax bill on an annual basis. It's a multiple number of factors, and I'll review those with you this evening. Lynn, could you advance that for me, please? I don't think this was working. Thank you. So there are several factors that impact an annual property tax bill for an individual. The first, obviously, is the change in the tax levy. And you have the town's tax levy that's included on your tax bill, which is subject to Proposition 2.5. You have the fire district's tax levy that is included in your tax bill. And then you have the community preservation tax, which is 3% of the real estate tax amount on your tax bill. That's just one factor that goes in to determining the change in your tax bill from year to year. The second is your change in your assessed value, and this is really what impacted the tax bills for fiscal year '23 more than anything. As we reported to you back in November when we were talking about setting the tax rate, we were seeing an average increase across the town of 27% in the residential real estate market. Some areas saw significantly higher percentage increases in their assessed values than that. Others saw less, but the average is 27%. So that's the number one factor that affected changes in tax bills year over year. Those values were based on calendar year 2021 sales data. All those sales are on the assessor's website by village if anybody wants to take a look at what those sales looked like. But that's what we use to set the values for fiscal year 2023. And then we have a shift in the tax levy between classes of taxpayers. There's a natural shift in a portion of the tax levy this year from the CIP class to the residential class because the residential class went up on average 27%, but the CIP, commercial, industrial, personal property class only went up 14%. So there's a little bit of a shift of the tax levy from one class to the other because of that, and I'll show you how that works. And then, of course, we have the residential exemption, which is voted on by the town council. What is the percentage? It's stayed at 20%. And what's the value of that exemption and whether or not you continue to qualify for it will impact your tax bill. As several of you have been informed by some of your constituents, some of them have lost the residential exemption, and I'll talk a little bit more about that as to why and how that can be fixed. So that's worth $1,072 this year, so that could have a significant impact on a tax bill if you lose it. Next slide, Lynn. Well, it works. Thank you. So here are the components of the changes in the tax levies. We had the town tax levy went up 3.2% or $4.4 million. That's Proposition 2.5 plus a factor of new growth. We had the Barnstable Fire District's tax levy actually went down 3.6%. Fire District's tax levy went up 61% or $5.5 million. That significantly impacts residents within the Fire District's tax bills, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. None of these fire districts are subject to Proposition 2.5, by the way. Cotuit was down $75,000, Hyannis was up $260,000, and West Barnstable was up $67,000. So that's one factor. A little bit more into COM's situation. As you can see here, this is their tax levy over the last 6 years. They were reducing their tax levy from fiscal year 19 to 20, 21, 22. So there were actually reductions to their tax levy in the past 3 years, and you would have seen a slight benefit in your tax bill as a result of that. My understanding is they were using reserves to balance their operating budget, which resulted in that much lower tax levy in 2022. Now they have to get themselves back up to a tax levy that can allow them to continue to fund their current level of services, and that required their tax levy to get back up to $14 million, a little bit higher than what it was back in FY19. But on average, over the 6-year period, it's about a 5.4% increase in their tax levy. But that's an example if you decide to use free cash to balance or to reduce your tax levy in 1 year and then come back the following year and not continue to do that practice, this is what could happen to your tax levy. So we've always recommended to steadily increase the tax levy by 2.5% to avoid spikes like this. Number two, change in assessed values. This is the biggest component this year in affecting tax bills. The goal of the property assessment is to maintain a full and fair market value tax base to ensure that the tax levy in any given year is equitably distributed based on that fair market value. Property taxes are based on the market value of the property, not an individual's inability to pay those taxes, which is unfortunate in some circumstances, especially homeowners who may be retired and living in a waterfront property who have had that home for years, but sales of waterfront properties over the past couple of decades have resulted in significant increases in those assessed values. And that's what we saw in 2021, significant increases in waterfront property values, because that's what they're selling for. We had to get the values corrected and up to what the market values are for those properties. This is accomplished by using computer-assisted mass appraisal software systems, or CAMA systems, It's not the same methodology used to do fee appraisers, that fee appraisers use, which is comparable sales necessarily. And so, but that's the goal of property assessment in Massachusetts. So here's an example of 4 different scenarios for a property that was valued at $500,000 in 2022. And based on the percentage change in their assessed value, this is what the change in their property tax bill would have looked like. So under scenario A, if the property value assessment increased 10%, our tax rate actually went down 18%. And this is before any residential exemption is applied, because I'm trying to show it with, without the residential exemption being impacted, but just the impact of the change from the assessed value. The actual tax bill for a taxpayer under scenario A resulted in a 10% reduction in their tax bill, even though their assessment went up 10%. Under scenario B, if their assessment went up 22%, they actually saw no increase in their tax bill. Under scenario C, which is the average, 27%, the taxpayer would have seen a 4% increase in their tax bill. And under scenario D, if the assessment went up 34%, they would have seen a 10% increase in their tax bill. It's important to let your constituents know that if they don't agree with the assessed value of their property, to contact the assessor's office and file an abatement so that we can take a look at your assessment to make sure we have it correct. We're not perfect by any means. We make mistakes, and we could have made a mistake on any property value in town, and we can correct that through the abatement process. That's what it's there for. So please contact the assessor's office. You have until February 1st to file for an abatement. The third component is the natural shift in the tax levy as the residential class goes up and the CIP class goes up. If they go up at different percentages, we have a natural shift in the tax levy. And here's an example of what happened in 2023. We take the 2023 tax levy of $140 million and we multiply it by 89%, which represents the total residential property value in town. 89% of our property value is comprised of residential property. So they're going to pay $125 million of taxes. If we take that FY23 tax levy and multiply it by the residential percentage from last year, it was only 87.9%, 1.1% less. They would have, if it didn't change, that would have resulted in paying $123 million of that $125 million tax levy. That's $1.5 million of tax levy that got shifted from the CIP class to the residential class as a natural shift as a result of change in property values. That has about an 8 cent impact on the tax rate, or $40 for a $500,000 home. That happens every year as those percentages shifts. It went the other way for several years where we saw CIP property values increasing and residential properties decreasing. So it's just a natural shift that occurs. And then again, of course, the fourth component is the residential exemption. The value of the residential exemption for fiscal year 23 went up from $119,000 to $151,000, which is the result of the average assessed value in town going up. And that resulted in a tax rate of $1.57 less for the residential class. The tax bill savings of that residential exemption, or the value of that residential exemption, is $1,072. We had 11,631 properties qualify in fiscal year 23, slightly down from the year before. But that results in taxes of $1.7 million being shifted from primary homeowners to secondary homeowners and primary homeowners with a higher value. So that's the shift. That's what occurs with the residential exemption. You're shifting taxes within the residential class from one group of residential taxpayers to another group of residential taxpayers. And in this year, it was $1,763 that got shifted. Now, again, some of you have been notified that the residential exemption was lost on some of your properties, some of your constituents' properties. Well, that happens because every year we go through a process, our assessing operations go through a process to try to recertify people to make sure that they still qualify. We don't know if they become disqualified at any point in time. They may have bought a second home, they have made a different home their primary residence, they really don't qualify in Barnstable anymore, we're not going to know. So we have to go through a process of recertification periodically, and we try to do about 2,000 properties a year. We try to recertify them. The assessor's operation sends out 2 notices, and if we don't receive the requested information back, the exemption automatically gets removed from the property before the tax bills go out for the 3rd and 4th quarter. However, if it was just a result of someone not submitting that paperwork to the assessor's office in time, we can get that back on by April 1st. Taxpayer needs to reach out to the assessing office, submit the documentation required, and we can get that exemption applied back to the property so that we can adjust your 4th quarter tax bill. So again, the April 1st deadline is the deadline. And we're going to make some changes to the letter that goes out by the assessing office to make sure that the taxpayer knows to get that information to us by October 15th every year. If we don't get it by October 15th, we don't have enough time to make the adjustments, and we're going to automatically take it off the property until we get that paperwork, because we have to get the tax bills out. And we take it off because if the person doesn't qualify anymore, and we leave it on, then that's $1,000 we're never going to get back from that taxpayer that didn't deserve it. So we have to make sure that we recertify these people on a periodic basis. And every time a property transfers ownership, we always send this letter out to the new owner explaining to them what the residential exemption is and how they can apply for it, because we automatically take it off on property sales, because you don't know if the new owner is going to make this their primary residence or not. Here's some statistics on the 2023 tax bills. We sent out 27,535,000 real estate tax bills, commercial and residential, predominantly residential. The median tax bill increase was $146. That means half of the homeowners in the town of Barnstable or less saw a tax bill increase of $146 or less. The average tax bill increase was higher at $381. The number of lower tax bills, 7,650, 28% of our homeowners saw reductions in their tax bills. 19,000, however, over almost 20,000 saw increases, some of them significant, and again, because of the significant increase in their assessed value based on where they're located. The largest tax bill increase was at 850 Falmouth Road, which is a multiple unit housing that's being under construction, as you know. New tax growth, that's what that is. And then the largest tax bill decrease was at one of our largest taxpayers, at Cape Cod Mall. Their assessment went up $20 million from $131 million to $151 million. They still saw a reduction in their tax bill by almost $100,000. They still pay over $1.6 million in taxes, but it was a significant decrease for them because their assessment only went up 20%. And they have notified us that they're going to appeal that value as well. They've appealed their assessed value for the past several years. And here's an example, finally, of just, this is very isolated. This is an example of my neighbors, the neighbor to the left of me and the neighbor to the right of me. Both properties sold. I don't know what that says about me as a neighbor, but the one on the left has a house on it and it sold for $650,000. We moved their assessment from $449 to $553 based on the 21 sales data, but it sold for $650. That tells me expect another increase in your assessed values next year. 2022 is still a strong market for residential property, not just 21, but 22 as well. So, and the one on the left, on the right, is a vacant piece of land next to me. I thought about buying it, but not for that price. I can't afford that. $240,000 it sold for. It's an acre of land. It's developable. It's grandfathered in under 2-acre zoning. It was assessed at $120,000 last year. We moved it up to $162,000 based on sales data. It sold for $240,000. So this tells me I'm preparing myself for another significant increase in my assessed value next year. Mr. Partridge, thank you. But it's justified based on these sales data. So I think that concludes my comments this evening. Lane is here, our Director of Assessing. If anybody has any questions for either one of us, we'd be happy to answer them. But if you'll indulge me for a minute, Mr. President, I'd like to introduce you this evening. I meant to do this earlier. Our new Deputy Director of Finance of School Operations is here, Chris Dwelly. Chris, could you stand, please?
Hi, Chris.
Chris joined us on Tuesday. Some of you may know Chris. He used to work in Yarmouth. For a couple of years he was there, and he came from the town of Dover, a town administrator in Dover. And he worked for the mayor's office up in Boston for a few years and the Collins Center at UMass as well. So great experience, and we're happy to have him aboard. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. And if you could, just stick with us for a moment, and it might be a question for Lane as well, but looking over to Council Atsalis, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark, could you pull up the slide with the fire districts increases, please?
Right there, Len. You can go back one.
Here we go.
That one.
Okay. So a few meetings ago, I just had a point of information that I provided that the Prudential Committee of COM had a shortfall 3 years ago, about over the last roughly 5 years, a shortfall of $4.5 million. Some might say $5 million. So 3 years ago, they, politely, I'll call it messed up by $1.5 million. Then this current year was another $3 million. So the fact that that happened twice in 3 to 4 years is unacceptable by my constituents as well as the others in Osterville and Marston's Mills, I'm sure. So when I see this, and I'm sure when residents see this, they're going to get a sense of, well, are we trying to make up for their mismanagement of funds? Again, maybe I'm making that too simplistic, but unfortunately that's how people like me look at it, and residents will look, some residents or many residents will look at it as well. So I know that this isn't something that we have control over, but I think the residents of COM need an explanation for, they have a $4.5 to $5 million shortfall, and that's not just that. Okay, we're also talking about health insurance overpayments that they've decided not to have personnel repay, poorly maintained buildings, fleet maintenance issues, and an underutilized training budget. So I don't expect that this is something you're going to necessarily be able to answer, but I have to highlight it again because 61.3%, that's going to raise a lot of questions and a lot of ire in the community. So, and to whomever's listening, maybe we'll get some feedback from you as well, but that's all I wanted to say for now. Thank you.
And just a point of information, Town of Barnstable is a pass-through for what all fire districts charge. So yes, it is, and again, sharing information in regards to what the shortfalls or mismanagement might be of different fire districts. I think it's important to know that that is not a reflection on the staff and council of the Town of Barnstable. And if you want to get more information, and the public is listening to this, I would say your best bet is to contact your fire commissioner and your fire prudential committee. So, because they would be the ones that would be held accountable and be able to better explain for this increase. So, but I do appreciate the point of information. So thank you, Council Atsalis.
And if I may add one more point to your comment.
Sure.
Thank you for clarifying that. Attend the Prudential Committee meetings to those folks that are listening, because my understanding is the public almost never shows up. So oftentimes things are being done in a vacuum. Again, you just got to show up and hold these folks accountable. So thank you.
Thank you. And then, Mark, if you wanted to add anything to that, if I missed anything in regards to that. So I just think it's important that in a council, we recognize that that doesn't fall on the staff here down at Barnstable. So, and under your purview, purview. So,
well said, because you're not the appropriating authorities for the fire districts. You don't set those budgets, and we don't manage their finances.
So, But I do appreciate your honesty in giving our constituents and our residents an honest answer to a question. I live in the Com Fire District, and if anybody looks at my address, my bill doubled. So it's it was a little bit of a shock value, truly. So that being said, Vice President Cullen, please. I don't want to talk too much about the fire districts if possible, because again, it's not something we have control over. But Vice President Cullen.
That has a nice ring to it, doesn't it?
Sure.
I'm just kidding. Thank you for that presentation. I asked for that because I have several constituents that were very upset and shocked and didn't understand how the numbers were divined. And I think it's really important that we go through this thing step by step the way you did, exactly the way you did, to explain what we actually do have control over, what's within the confines of state law, Proposition 2.5, what is outside of that. All of the things you discussed were incredibly important. This slide perhaps shows the biggest need for people to step up and get involved in their communities, because it's not the staff in the town of Barnstable, it's not the staff at COM. It's the Prudential Committee, it's the elected officials that are making these decisions. So I really encourage everybody to pull papers and run and get more involved in your community if you're upset when you see things like this. You should be upset if you see things like this. But nonetheless, I'm thankful that it's a really confusing model that we use when it comes to taxes and assessment, and the difference between an assessment and comps and all the other things, and it's really important. So I hope that we have a lot of people that look this up again on Channel 18. I really thank you for your time on this. I know it was a big ask to put it all together, and I think it's super important that we share with people that we're not just divining numbers with an abacus in the back room, that there's models that we have to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Cullum. Any other comment, question? Council Clark.
Thank you very much, President Levesque, and thank you very much, Mark, for your comprehensive presentation. For the public, will they be able to get this information on the town's website?
Yes, it is. It's up there
And where do they find it?
under the Town Council section of presentations under Town Council.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Could you also, Director Milne, forward this directly to the Town Council?
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you very much. Any other questions? Oh, I'm sorry, there's a number of them. Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, President Levesque. Thank you, Mark, for this presentation. I have a couple of variety of questions. Just in terms of, since we have the fire district thing up, is there any regulations or law from DOR that determines how many reserves you can keep on hand? I mean, is it infinite, the reserves you can have, or is there some pressure to use your reserves at some point?
Yeah, there's no law limiting the amount of reserves that a town or a fire district could have on hand at any point in time. There is one for regional school districts, but that's the only one I'm aware of. So, but to your point, I think there comes a point in time where you can't just build reserves for the purpose of just building reserves.
Right.
So what we do with our reserves here in the town is we use them to augment our capital program.
Okay. Could you put up the slide on the CIP, the taxes paid by our commercial side?
The shift, is this the one?
No, it showed the largest taxpayer, like the mall. And yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right there.
The stats.
So it's interesting that the largest bill increase would be 850 Falmouth Road, which we also did a tip agreement on.
Yes.
So I'd be curious if we keep track of the difference between the tax revenue we could earn and that we don't earn?
Yep.
Is that
Yes.
something we?
Yes, we can do that.
It
yeah.
would just be interesting to hear about every once in a while.
Okay.
And also, what percentage of our commercial taxpayers have provided the appropriate documentation to come up with a good estimate of their valuation?
Let me ask, we'll get that information from our Director of Assessor and report that back to you.
Okay.
I don't have that number with me.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Rappacetti, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mark. Since Director of Assessing is here, Mr. Partridge. I did want to point out that he put together a great video, Assessing 101, which I've shared with my constituents, which pretty much goes through this excellent video, because I had constituents that whose tax bills doubled or near doubled and were floored by it. So I had to explain that the tax rate went down, but your value went up. So, but very, very good. So thank you for that. Appreciate it. And don't get me started on the fire district.
Turn it off.
Thanks, Councilor Avgoseti. Councilor Starr, please.
No, I'm all set.
Okay.
Finish
Your question was answered.
thank you.
Yes, very good. Councilor Ledke, please.
Thank you, President Levesque, and thank you, Mark. My question was about the, or is about the residential exemption. You mentioned it's at 20%, and then you mentioned you wanted to have data in by October so you guys could do what you need to do. And then you'd also mentioned it was kind of tough luck for those that inherited homes that are on the water and their, rates go up and maybe they have trouble paying. So what I'm getting at is, what is the maximum residential exemption? And do you, or does Mr. Partridge, run that drill on an annual basis to see what that might do to inform the town council, who I understand votes on the residential exemption each year? How are we informed on the impact? And I would think now with some of these, and you also implied that next year would be even worse, it's okay to say tough luck, but if there's anything we could do to help some of these folks, and again, my precinct, I'm getting it too, like it sounds like several others are getting, just what kind of drill do we do on that residential exemption?
Thank you for that question. Yes. Well, every November, we come before the council during the tax classification hearing and present that residential exemption and the impact of the residential exemption and what changes to the residential exemption and how that would impact tax bills. So that is provided on an annual basis. So we can do it more frequently than annually during the tax classification hearing. But the maximum percentage that we can go to is 35%. There's a couple of communities in the Commonwealth that go to that level. I think City of Boston's one. So we're at 20, and it could go as high as 35%. And that can provide some relief to primary residencies to a certain point. If you're a primary residency here in Barnstable and your property value is about $1.7 million or more, it doesn't provide you any relief. It's really targeted to providing tax relief to the lowest valued properties in town, not expensive properties on the waterfront. It won't provide them any relief, even if it's their primary home.
Okay, the only follow-up would be, how long have we been at 20%? And when did we start?
2006 was the first year we adopted it, so it's been in place at 20% ever since then. Hasn't changed.
And sorry, one last thing. If it went up even further, would there be some people who would not have to pay property taxes? Some of our lower, valued properties, some of our lower income residents?
I think the minimum we can't go any lower than, is it 10%? 10% of the property value. So if the residential exemption results in a reduction in the assessment, it can't go below 10% of the property value. So they're always going to pay tax on at least 10% of their assessed value.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor King. A follow-up, Councilor
I
Smith?
just wanted to let Councilor Lutke know that we're actually very unique in the Commonwealth. I think there's only 25 towns and cities that have a residential exemption. And, we do debate every year whether we're going to keep the exemption and whether we're going to change it. But I think that it has been something that we've approved every year.
Yep.
So.
And I know Mashpee just joined the club, this year. In 2023, they adopted a residential exemption for the first time.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Any other follow-up on this side? Anybody else on this side? Okay, great. Thank you very much for being here. And we'll move forward. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Milne. Mark Ellis, Town Manager. Just to restate what's been said, February 1st, Mark, is when abatements need to be filed by for anybody who is not satisfied with their tax on their property. Mark, what was the date again for putting in your data, your information for residential exemption? April 1st. April 1st, thank you. April 1st. So if you've fallen off the list for qualifying for residential exemption, get your paperwork in, okay? Many times I have people visit my office after they've talked, after April 1st, to the assessor, and there's nothing we can do for them at that point, okay? So please be aware of these dates. It's very important. All right. Yeah, if there's more questions on this for Director Milne, or?
I was going to say that if you haven't applied for the residential exemption yet, you have to apply by the end of this month, right?
No, that's for your tax, that's for an abatement.
So I thought April 1st was reapply?
Recertify, Council Star.
Residential exemption, April
My
1st.
mistake, I should have asked.
Filing for an abatement is February 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yeah,
Sure.
that helps.
And it's good, Director Milne had already said that, but it's good to repeat it so to get the permanency
Well,
in people's
dates are
minds.
critical here
Yes, they
for
are.
everybody,
Yes,
so-
thank you very much. Just in case, so much information, things get lost in the shuffle, so I appreciate you highlighting that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Town Manager Ellis. I just wanted to know in addition to abatements, we do offer certain exemptions for seniors, veterans. Do those also fall on the February 1st date?
April 1st.
Thank you.
We'll
Great
put out
question.
another, we'll have Lane do 102 for everybody. And thank you, Councilor Rapkassetti, for bringing that up. Actually, I've had other communities call me, and I have forwarded them that video, because this is happening across Massachusetts. And it's interesting, the residents will say to me, well, I'm not selling my home, so why should the value change? You know what I mean? So there's that basic level of understanding of assessment of a property and then how it's taxed. So he did a great job. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'll stop there, sir.
That sounds good.
Okay. Continuing on with my town manager communication, and Director Benoit is here with me this evening. If there's any detailed questions, on January 5th, 2023, a potential security threat was detected on the town's network by multiple layers of protection that we have in place in our system. So our protection layers identified this network threat. These systems, these systems worked as intended. After post-evaluation of the threat, we determined that we had successfully prevented the threat from gaining access to our system. During the incident, the town website was intentionally taken offline as a precaution. We apologize for any inconvenience or interruption of business that may have occurred as a result of this incident. After ensuring that the threat was mitigated, we brought the website back online on January 6, 2023, returning to normal operations. As a further immediate precaution, we installed an additional anti-malware program across all of our town PCs. There are further actions that we can take to potentially strengthen our security posture against future threats. Primary among these is upgrading the town's email server and Microsoft Office software, which is scheduled for replacement in FY 2024. So we would have been coming in as part of this budget this year, asking for these funds. We plan to bring forward a supplemental appropriation request to expedite this system improvement. So we're not going to wait for the budget process. We're going to bring it in shortly. We are also evaluating the option of moving the town's website to an external hosting provider, which would better isolate this public-facing system from the town's network and also provide assurance that the website will continue to function regardless of future temporary outages with our internal system. Beyond that, we've planned to upgrade and modernize our backup and disaster recovery strategies in 2024. Moving these projects forward sooner would also improve our security posture and our ability to quickly recover from any disaster or cybersecurity event. And we'll keep you advised of our progress on this matter. I don't know if anybody has any questions, but Director Benoit's here with me in case you do. Yes, sir.
That's a great suggestion. Anybody have any questions for Director Benoit at this point in time? But Council Clark.
Just want to thank Director Benoit for being ahead of this and being able to protect the town.
Well, thank you. We read in the newspaper of this happening at all levels, so it's the world we're in, and we're doing everything to make this a reliable and safe system.
And I think it's important to mention that our software did exactly what it was supposed to do.
Yes, thank you.
And that at the same time, we are trying to find ways to make it more robust, so that in the future, things like this may not be maybe be able to be stopped. So it was already in process, and we're going to, like you said, expedite that moving forward. Thank you.
Matt?
Oh, Councilor Shinet, please.
Just a quick question. Are we going to separate the web server from the rest of the, I mean, I think that was one of the issues that created our need to not have our council meeting, and so will there be some separation so that is less of a risk going forward?
I'm glad I have Director Benoit with me. Jim, why don't you come up?
Welcome, Director Benoit.
Thank you. Jim Benoit, Director of IT. So yes, we're evaluating moving the web server to an external hosting provider that would kind of keep that insulated from the town network and potentially, provide for more reliability.
What's the percentage of our operations that are on our cloud-based versus internal, or however you describe that?
It's going more and more towards the cloud. A lot of our systems like permitting and things like that are on the cloud. We do have a number of systems that are still internal, and we are looking to move in some of that stuff to the cloud, particularly email is the big one.
Okay. So will that be part of what it will be looking at for the supplemental appropriations? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Benoit? Thank you. Okay, moving along with our town manager report, please.
Thank you. Again, Mark Ells, Town Manager. Last July, the Federal District Court granted the town's motion to dismiss the Clean Water Act lawsuit filed against the town by the Conservation Law Foundation. In August, CLF filed a motion for reconsideration with the District Court. 2 weeks ago, Judge Burroughs rejected CLF's argument and denied CLF's motion for reconsideration. But she amended her previous order dismissing the case to be a dismissal without prejudice. This means that CLF is free to file a new complaint on this matter. Town Attorney Nober is here with me if you want to ask any specific questions on this. Certainly this is notable to bring forward to the Town Council. This is significant, relevant to that lawsuit, and we will keep you up to date if there are any new developments on this matter. Yes, sir.
Councilor Starr, please.
Thank you. So just quickly, what was the basis of the dismissal?
Karen?
What was the thing? Is there a quick answer? No.
There is a quick answer. Good evening, councilors. Based on what CLF alleged in their complaint, the transit time was close to 20 or 21 years. And the court said that's too long a time for it to be the functional equivalent of a direct discharge. And so now they have the opportunity to file a new complaint and claim something different.
Something different, okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Councilor Shaughnessy, please.
Attorney Nober, did they ask for that amendment in their motion for reconsideration, or do we think that's something Judge Burroughs inadvertently added to our order? that had not been there? In other words, did they ask on their motion consideration to add the without prejudice? Did they seek that, or?
I don't think they specifically sought that. They may have, actually. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
I'd have to check.
Okay.
They may have.
Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Are we currently in a holding pattern then? I mean, are we
We are.
accruing any legal expenses regarding this lawsuit at this point?
We are incurring some legal expenses. We're looking at a few things which I would prefer to discuss in detail
Absolutely.
in executive session.
Okay.
But they're minimal expenses.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, Mark Ells, Town Manager. An annual town census is mailed to all Barnstable residents at the beginning of each year in January. The census is an important legal document mandated by Mass General Law, which helps maintain and update voter registration. If there are no changes to your household, please sign and return your census to the town's clerk's office. You can update the information provided by adding, deleting, or making changes below the printed information. For assistance, please call our town clerk's office, 862-4044. The communications office partnered with the town clerk's office to include a communication survey with this year's town census. There is an option to take the survey online, and the online survey is available in English, Portuguese, and Spanish. Our town clerk, Ann Quirk, and our director of communication, Lynn Poyant, are both here. So if anybody has any questions about that, they can answer that.
Let's continue on with the
Yes, sir.
report, and then we can ask
Yes,
questions
sir.
at the end.
We are proceeding with the budget action calendar on schedule. So if you want to take a look at that and have any questions, please ask me, but we're on schedule. Town of Barnstable submitted comments on December 23rd on the Eversource Vegetation Management Plan pending before the Mass Department of Agricultural Resources. The VMP, as it's referred to, is intended to justify the need to control vegetation, identify target vegetation, describe the intended method of control, describe methods for identifying sensitive areas, describe operational guidelines for applicators, outline a program of integrated pest management designed to reduce the use of herbicides, and describe alternate land use activities. Our staff continues to discuss next steps as we are concerned with the safety of the rationale being more than 30 years old and generic and not specific to Cape Cod soil conditions. It really doesn't reflect what we now know about emerging contaminants, and we'll keep you advised as we progress on this. On June 1st, 2022, Town of Barnstable was informed of regulatory revisions the Mass Department of Environmental Protection are developing to ensure that timely action are taken to restore and protect coastal estuaries that have been impacted by excessive nitrogen pollution. Mass DEP conducted 3 public hearings, one of them here in Town Hall on December 5th. I've given you links to the next 2 opportunities to participate in public hearings. One remote only on January 24th, 2023. Another remote only on January 25th, 2023. So both of those links are available in my communication and on our website, or you can go in, look at the town manager's report, grab the link if you want to view those. It also gives you the information on the draft regulations, both Title V and watershed permit regulations, and what's being proposed. Town of Barnstable staff is coordinating with the Board of Health closely We're monitoring these amendments to both regulations. We are preparing comments on these proposed regulatory changes to be submitted to Mass DEP by January 30th, 2023. In reference to those comments, the town has a comprehensive wastewater management plan, which has been reviewed and approved by the state and local environmental agencies. It is our belief that the CWMP can act as the basis for the necessary watershed permit if approved by the state under these proposed regs. I emphasize can and if. Such efforts on the part of the town, in combination with satisfying other aspects of the proposed regulations, may relieve the residents of the town from the requirement to install innovative on-site septic systems on their property. We'll continue to advise our community as those proposed regulations advance through approval and implementation. The Department of Public Works hosted 2 public meetings in review of alternatives for long-term resiliency at Sandy Neck Beach facility. An in-person meeting was held on Tuesday, January 10th, followed by a virtual meeting held on Thursday, January 12th. Discussions included an overview of the site and its unique natural resources before providing an extensive look at the problem, severe erosion, dune loss, and repetitive flooding. Analysis showed just how vulnerable the site is now in present-day conditions and how inaction would contribute to the loss of public access and infrastructure. Attendees were presented with 3 alternatives that were selected for further exploration. Each alternative was weighed against project goals, including the need to be sustainable for at least 50 years and be permitted under current regulations. We urge any interested members of the public to view the presentations available on the town's website, on Town Channel 18 video on demand on our website. I give you the link there, and provide feedback. Public comments are due by January 24th and can be sent directly to Amber Unruh. She's our project manager over this one. And presentation slides can be found on the Town of Barnstable website within Marine and Environmental Affairs Department. I provide the link there as well. Next steps will include starting the design of the selected alternative and initiating the permitting process. We'll keep you advised as this project progresses. There are 3 separate wind power projects ongoing in the town of Barnstable. Each project is proceeding separately from the other. I've had numerous questions from the public regarding this. There seems to be a lot of confusion and blending of projects and what they're reading in the paper, especially about, financial challenges that Commonwealth wind project that Douse's Beach Landing is having at this time. And so I've put together a video update that I've emailed to all the council. It's on the website. I'm sending it out to the public that really describes what's going on. And we will continue to do those updates. I've done one on Title V as well. But whenever issues when we begin to accumulate a lot of questions, emails, et cetera, I typically do those updates, and it's typically viewed fairly positively by our viewing public. I gave the link here to that particular video. To summarize the 3 projects, the first is the Vineyard Wind Project, landing at Colville's Beach. That's being implemented. If you look offshore, there's big barges out there, and they're pulling cable, and that's under construction. Actually, the conduit's in, the boxes in the parking lot are in, and they're pulling cable into that one. That will continue to proceed. It's gone up Strawberry Hill Road into Finney's and will continue north and tie into the substation that's along the Mid-Cape Highway up in Independence Park. We do have a host community agreement, and they are complying with the terms of the host community agreement, including we'll be receiving a second payment this year under that agreement, as well as many other things. A lot of residents have asked me that question. Have they defaulted on the host community agreement for the Vineyard Wind project? No. Different entity, in fact, than the other two projects. The second project, Park City Wind, is a proposed landing at the west end of Craigville Beach. Park City Wind project is in the latter stages of permitting. There is a host community agreement in place for the Park City Wind project. The third is Commonwealth Wind, that is in what I am describing as mid-stages of permitting, and has requested a renegotiation of its power purchase agreement with state agencies. Following a discussion with Avangrid on December 16th, we paused our host community negotiations, and our legal department has taken Avangrid's actions under advisement. As the details of these actions become better understood, I will advise the town council regarding next steps. Avangrid did notify me that they do intend to and are continuing permitting on this project, and therefore the town will continue to meet with Avangrid relative to their MEPA filings and any other regulatory permits that they are pursuing. We'll keep you advised as this progresses. Local comprehensive planning, together with the Planning and Development, Local Comprehensive Planning Committee, together with the Planning and Development Department, encourages all residents, business owners, members of the workforce to take the Barnstable Local Comprehensive Plan Survey, and I provide you the link. It's due tomorrow. They're saying do it before the weekend's over. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir.
Councilor Starr, we're going to wait till the end, if you could, please. I don't want to be
All
there,
right.
so let's keep going.
At the second meeting of the LPC, Thursday, January 26, 5 p.m., the committee will discuss next steps to bring together all the community's comments received and the process to draft a vision for future land use, infrastructure, and resource protection for the town and its 7 villages. After collecting After collecting community input from a variety of stakeholders in November, the Great Streets Downtown Hyannis project is entering a second phase. Walkability expert Jeff Speck and the Great Streets team are excited to present early streets and intersection design concepts, including a return to a two-way travel downtown for the community's feedback. The public is invited to review these concepts during the presentation and open house on Wednesday, January 21st, 7 to 9 p.m. at Barnstable High School, main cafeteria. Feedback from this meeting will be used to further refine final designs that will be delivered later this spring. Let's see here. Oh, finally, on Tuesday, January 31st at 4:30 p.m., an information session will be held in Town Hall hearing room to seek community input on the new Centerville Playground. We invite the public to join us at this family-friendly event to view the proposed designs and equipment choice. Staff from the Department of Public Works and Community Services Department will be on hand to share information, answer questions, and listen to your ideas. That concludes my town manager update.
Thank you, Town Manager Ells, and thank you, councilors, for waiting till the end. And typically, once we get back, now that we're back in person, this is typically what happened. And then at the end, we all took notes, and then we would ask questions at the end. So without further ado, Councilor Lucky, you had your hand up earlier.
Thank you, President Levesque. I just wanted to do a shout out to whoever designed that communication survey. I thought that thing was amazing. I don't know what you guys thought. It was done so beautifully. It was so efficient. It led you just where you needed to be led. It was like it answered every question you had. So really, a hats off to that survey. I hope we're getting good participation on it because it should yield really good results. So that's the one comment on that. And then for you, Mr. Els, quick question on the wind stuff. If you could tell me for each three of them, where is the power going for Vineyard, Park, and Commonwealth?
For Vineyard Wind, they have a power purchase agreement, and I believe, and I can be corrected by legal if I'm not correct on this, but I believe it's with Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the utilities. In the case of Park City, it is, I believe, the state of Connecticut and the utilities, and I believe in the case of Commonwealth Wind, it is again Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the utilities.
And do we know how much of that stays here on Cape Cod, or is that it just however it's decided?
No, it goes into the grid. And
Goes into the grid?
Yes.
Okay. And do all three have substations? I get the impression Vineyard Wind is using an existing substation.
There are two substations.
But Park and Commonwealth are building new ones. Is that accurate?
No, well, yes, it is accurate, but there are two existing substations that Eversource, that will bring it into the grid, that are Eversource's substations. One is in Independence Park, and that is the one that Vineyard Wind is tying into.
Okay.
Now, on the Park City project, they have a small substation that they have to construct off of Chute Flying Hill Road, and then I believe they are traversing through what are power lines out in that area, out to the Oak Street substation, which is Eversource's. In the case of Commonwealth Wind, they are proposing to do a substation specific to their project that will tie in again to the Oak Street substation. And I believe the Commonwealth Wind proposed substation is up along the Mid-Cape Highway.
Okay. Yeah, the Park City one seemed pretty big. It's 5 acres, 5-acre substation. So that's pretty big. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
But I don't know the specific acreage. I'd have to go back and look.
Yeah, it said 5 acres with a 400-foot wall around it, 35 feet tall to buffer the noise.
Thank you, Councilor King. Any other questions for Town Manager Els? Councilor Rapcasetti, please.
Thank you for the report, Mark. On number 11, with regard to the Great Streets downtown Hyannis, after the final designs are delivered, when do you expect implementation?
I think we have a lot of discussion first. Okay. I've had a lot of conversation with our public and with our businesses. But what I'll do for next council meeting is have Director Jenkins come in with a tentative timeline on what they would think. I don't know that, I'm very cautious to answer your question, though, even with Elizabeth answering it for us, because our Public Works Department and our certainly public safety officials, police and fire, need to be an active part of the review for whatever they are conceptualizing in design and then want to move to final. So what a designer can do it in and what we internally can digest and then process and come out with a workable plan might be two different things.
And will that open house or any presentation be recorded? So
yes, we'll take care of all of that.
Good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Starr, please.
Thank you very much. My question, thank you for your whole report, but the vegetation management plan, have we written a response?
We did. Yes, we responded and submitted by the due date, but we believe, and I can have Attorney McLaughlin provide additional comment, but really it's okay, what additionally can we do beyond just those comments? And so their legal's going to get back to me on their recommended course of action.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yes.
Next, let's see. So the DEP comment period is still open, and we haven't written our response to them yet. I'm just saying I would like to. It would be educational and informational, for people to see the town's perspective, to give everybody else a chance to maybe use some of that information to write their own responses.
In a summarized manner, because our time to comment was limited, I did present at the public hearing orally.
Okay.
We are preparing written comments. They are draft. I have shared my kind of summarized presentation, if time wasn't limited, of what I would have said. I don't know that we've significantly changed that, moving. It was originally due at the end of December. It got moved out till the end of January. I'm actually hoping they give it at least another 30 days because there are many things to think about. The more time we review this, the more we realize that there is a lot to consider depending on what gets adopted and then how it's interpreted and then how it's implemented. So I don't know that you can ever flush all of that out during a comment period. But I think it's important for our public to understand a couple of things. I heard earlier discussion about innovative on-sites, which are a wonderful welcome technology and actually part of our CWMP, quite honestly, and were 2 decades ago as well. The challenge we have now with, our objective, our outcome, primary, is to put forward a plan that meets the Clean Water Act, that has identified, which we have, our TMDLs in our coastal embayments, and that whatever plan we come forward with gets us down to a loading level of nitrogen that satisfies, that meets those TMDLs, okay? Innovative on-sites don't do it. They do not do it. That's why we've proposed what we have. Now, what innovative on-sites do is reduce nitrogen, no question. So I spend a tremendous amount of time talking with our public about this because I say, innovative on-sites are wonderful and they will reduce nitrogen, and we're not being critical of that. But if it doesn't get you to the TMDL, which is the regulatory target that we're trying to meet, then it will really become a matter of, if our residents put in innovative on-sites, we collectively run the models, they don't get us to the TMDL, then we're coming back to you and telling you, okay, it's nice you did that, but now you got a sewer. So we really need to continue with this effort. And people are talking past each other a little bit. I use that description a lot on topics, but everybody's heading in a direction to reduce nitrogen, but we are going to be held accountable from the regulators to meet the requirements of the Clean Water Act and the TMDLs. And so please never lose that. Don't think that we're ignoring innovative on-sites. They're absolutely effective to reduce nitrogen. But collectively, do they get us to our TMDLs? Not at this time. So just please keep that in mind. And that, I say all of this, not to go off topic, but to say that this is what we're looking at in trying to move forward our CWMP as satisfying the nitrogen management plan requirement that would be in the new DEP regulations. Meaning, okay, we have one, may have to modify, add to it, but then it can be adopted as our nitrogen management plan. Okay, but if we don't meet our TMDLs, then it won't be. And so that's something that I'm talking with a lot of people, the regulators, about. They've shortened the time frame to 20 years, as you know, and talk about 75% reduction. But both Director Santos and I have had several conversations saying, okay, but if that doesn't get you to the TMDL, then you're also going to hold us accountable under the Clean Water Act to meet the TMDL. And how are we going to tell a resident that they did this, innovative on-site, and again, now we have to reduce it further, and the way to do it is with sewering. That's the challenge that we have in moving forward with reviewing these regulations, to make sure they're adopted in a way that allow for the good work that our community has done to be rolled into this so that our residents collectively will do this once. That's all. And that's going to be a big challenge. A lot of people will argue, I can't wait that long. 20, 30 years is too much. We should be reducing nitrogen now, and then later on, they'll say to me, Mark, emerging contaminants are coming. Phosphorus is an issue for us. Innovative on-sites aren't clear on how they address those, even though I'm sure some can. Those are coming as well. So we know we can treat that at a wastewater treatment plant. So these are the discussions we're having with the regulators. That's why I think another 30 days wouldn't be the end of the world. I think we need to really think through this and make sure that they hear our concerns. You're hearing it like a yes or a no. Yes, we like this. No, we don't. That's not really the answer we're looking for. We're trying to address a real problem, which is what we're introducing into our environment, whether it be nitrogen or other. And so let's take the time to try to do it together correctly. And I'm going to talk tomorrow, hopefully, a little bit about this, and we continue to talk about it. Sorry for the long answer.
And this really addresses the earlier conversation in regards to the town supporting innovative on-site systems, and as much as that's great, and we've when I first became a counselor and we were looking at those types of things, and I remember the discussion of wood chips, right? And this is what we're working with, and putting, a dividing line and putting wood chips in the ground next to a horse farm or different things like that. And this is going back in 2017 when I first became a town councilor. So the town of Barnstable has been looking into this, and quite honestly, those when the models were run and that we were in line with, again, our CWMP. In a lot of ways, these DEP regs throw a wrench into what we've already started doing, and is really muddying the waters in regards to how IA is actually taking, and it's not going to do a better job. It's just not. And the path we're moving forward with our sewer will get us to our TMDL. It will get us in line with our 208 plan, and we're on that path. We're moving forward with that now. Will IAs get us there in a quicker pattern, like Councilor Schnepp had mentioned in regards to areas we're not going to get to? Possibly. And we definitely, and I would support moving forward in that area, but I do not think it should deter, and I think it's important that the public understand it should not deter us moving forward with our sewer plan, because that is where it's going to get us. Other communities don't have those plans in place. They don't not have their TMDLs. We do. So therefore, we should continue to move forward, because that's really where we're supposed to be, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. So, but I think, and again, I don't want to distract. IAs are important. We should put some emphasis on there. But in the long term, for the viability of our quality of our water, sewer is a better answer.
We do, just to reassure everybody, we're not excluding anything ever. We do review this on a 5-year increment, and as technology advances, if we find a better way to get this done, hopefully no more costly than what we have in front of us. And as new regulations come, as we know over the life of a 30-year plan, we know emerging contaminants are going to be thrown into this mix. We know they're being looked at right now by the DEP. We'll modify the plan. And that's what we've said all along. We've said that about financing the plan. Some people have said, that it's the whole time, 30 years. We've never said that. We've always talked about 5-year increments. 5-year increments for technology, regulation, financing, because that's the only practical way to do this. And if innovative on-sites long-term present something different to us, it will be included in the plan. Right now, they don't satisfy the loading requirements to get us to those TMDLs.
Any other questions? Councilor Schnepp.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mark, for the very comprehensive report. Lots of stuff going on in town. I just wanted to shift focus to the public hearings or public meetings that were recently held on Sandy Neck. Toward the end of your paragraph, it says that next steps will include starting the design of the selected alternative and initiating the permitting process. And I was just curious how that selection is actually going to occur. Is that something that is a staff or council or board, I mean, where does that happen? Because I know we've allocated some funding for this, but I don't know where the decision-making goes.
Typically, the way that it happens is that we go through various stages of design, conceptual through final, and we engage our public as we have. We kind of go through a logical decision-making processes, which make sense and which don't, which are permissible and which don't. What are the costs involved? And we do know that this can lead us to capital money. We've gotten some design money, and we know that there is the potential for capital money in the future here. And so we will kind of logically progress through this, and we're down to 3 primary alternatives. And as we progress, that'll be reduced to probably ordering those, not eliminating any, meaning, okay, here's the primary, secondary, third, because we all know that sometimes the first one doesn't work out. And we'll continue to inform the council and the public as we move through that. So we never turn it over to the council and say, okay, choose one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they're quite different alternatives, so I would
They are.
think that you wouldn't be creating conceptual designs for each alternative. You'd be
Right.
starting down one path.
Correct.
And, okay.
Based on what the issue is, what the permittability is, et cetera. Director Santos, have I missed anything? No. Thank you, sir. He said no. Thank you, sir.
Councilor Rappacetti, did you have your hand up? Okay. Councilor Starr.
Thank you. I want to put a shout out to Amber Unruh. I watched both of the Sandy Neck meetings, and she was very concise and clear. There are 3 alternatives. First one is completely off the books because it's unpermittable. The second one isn't very good, and the third one sort of stands out as the way to go. But it was great conversations. We had people from the cottages. Off-road vehicle people talking, everybody, it was a good give and take. So she got some good information to take back, so that was good. The only last comment I have is I talked to Mr. Kupfer today from the planning department. He called me because he said that my zip code in Barnstable Village only got their postcards today for the LCP. So he was going to extend that
Okay.
to the end of next week.
Okay, great. I'll make sure that Elizabeth Jenkins announces that. Lynn, can you note that and get out any information to the public if that's the case?
Because I don't think there isn't an end date on the postcard itself, I don't think. But, okay. But they were going to give it just another week because of the postal
Yeah,
service.
I think it's a self-identified date to begin with, so if planning has said that, then that's what they'll do.
Thank you.
Thank you for the update, Councilor Starr. Any question? Councilor Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque. Thank you very much, Town Manager, for your report. 2 things. I do also, piggybacking on Councilor Lutke's comments about the communication survey, I hope that sometime in the future, when the time is right, we'll have a little recap on the results of this survey. Congratulations for reaching out to the people and capturing email addresses for people to get information from the town. And regarding the substations that are being developed and expanded in Oak Street, or on Oak Street in West Barnstable, to you, I'm wondering if in your negotiations you can tease out some landscaping so that the substations aren't so industrial looking in our rural community of West Barnstable.
Yeah, let's have a further conversation, because the proposed or the Eversource, or both?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
I know, being a utility, I don't know what, where.
We want
where
better enhanced landscaping at any substation. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah,
Okay.
appreciate that.
Yes, I will carry that
I
forward.
think that was a request maybe 20 years ago, and now it might
Yep.
be an opportunity for you to have some influence. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Clark. Councilor Atsalis, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mark. So this isn't really a question. I'm not really going to, but I just want to touch on the last item, number 12, regarding the Centerville Playground. This is in my precinct. It's a project that's near and dear to my heart because my kids used to play there, and it is, as most people who have been there know, it's an antiquated playground. And kudos to our staff from DPW, Community Services, Recreation, both current and retired directors, and especially resident volunteers who are giving up their free time to be involved with planning process, which has been going on for a little over a year now. And the result has been a very responsible, well-thought plan, which, by the way, we approved the budget for the first phase of the project last year, which is going to be improving the playground first and also needed parking. Because when it does improve, more people will want to attend and have their kids play there, but also to increase parking and to make it more ADA compliant. So I want to start there. However, unfortunately, yet again, there's a lot of hearsay out there that's leading to misinformation in the public, which has led to a petition that somebody put out, which now, last I knew, was pushing close to 1,000 people. And it was based on the irresponsible misinformation that we are removing the field in the back that's near and dear to many residents and children's hearts to put in a parking lot. And I think the term that was used, the paving paradise to put up a parking lot, which is the furthest from the truth, okay? Yes, there's a proposed parking plan that would utilize some of the existing field to put in parking that, by the way, will help handicapped folks get down to that park more safe, the playground more safely, as well as young children, the elderly, and everybody else for that matter. So the fact that this information was put out there on a petition to gain whatever sort of notoriety that's now occurred is a bit concerning to those of us here on the council and members of the public, and especially this committee who's put a lot of time and effort in. What's more disturbing is that even after this particular person who was informed by the town manager, the town council president, at least one member of the volunteer from the committee setting the record straight, the information on this petition was not changed. And that's unfortunate. It's still up there. It's still full of misinformation, the same information that was put out there. And now it even includes an exaggeration of an issue at our LaRusso complex. Needles strewn throughout the dugout. Crack pipes in the dugout. That's coming right from this particular petition. I've spent a lot of time down at that field over the years as a coach, as a volunteer. My family's been involved down there for many, many years. I can tell you I've never seen a needle in a dugout or on the field. I've never seen a crack pipe in a dugout or on the field. Has it happened? I'm sure it has at some point in time, but it's not to the extent that this person is using as an example to try to somehow justify keeping a field behind the recreation building in Centerville, which, by the way, and once again, is not going away to begin with. It's very disturbing to me that these things are happening across our villages, across our town, with varying issues. But this one is particularly disturbing because there's so many people trying to do a good thing for Centerville, for the town of Barnstable, and to have it tainted by an individual who's, I'm not sure what the motivations are. I can make some assumptions, but I won't bother going down that road here. I just want to take the opportunity to, again, acknowledge staff. And by the way, the reason why folks know about this project is because of transparency, okay? Members of staff who are on this committee chose to set up a table at the Centerville Stroll. They printed a plan, and they handed it out to people during the Centerville Stroll. And on that plan, it shows a proposed parking area in the back being expanded. And it certainly, if anyone that can read plans will look at it, it certainly shows the entire field is not being taken away. And I mention that because we are still hearing about lack of transparency. I think we've improved a lot as a town, as far as our town's concerned. In this case, it was because of transparency that people know about this project, and then the fact that this meeting at the end of the month is going to hopefully prove to be very productive. So please excuse me for taking up as much time as I have from my fellow councilors and those in the audience. But it's important because I've used this term before, and I really hate using it, but it seems like I have to. The misinformation train has now hit Centerville, and it's unfortunate. And I just, I just wanted to highlight that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councilor Atsalis. Any other questions, comments for Town Manager Ells? Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all.
Appreciate that. And just for note, that's 2 meetings worth of town manager report. So that's so for people wondering if they normally take that long, my answer would be no. So it's important. And moving forward, again, if there's certain times when certain directors are brought up about certain situations, then we will definitely direct those questions. However, moving through the manager and asking questions at the end is probably the most effective for time management. So now that being said, Vice President Cullen, please, if you could help me act on the minutes.
Yes, I'd like to act on the minutes from, it was a long time ago, from December 15th, 2022.
Second.
We have first and second. Any discussion in regards to these minutes? Okay. Not seeing any. If you could signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any opposed? Okay. Moving forward to communications from elected officials, boards, committees, staff, commission reports, correspondence, and announcements. Councilor Schnepp, please. That's going to be a hard one to undo.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2 quick announcements. The Housing Committee is in the process of reviewing the housing production plan. The next step will be to go to a joint committee of the Planning Board and the Housing Committee. And after that, probably sometime in March, that housing production plan will arrive at the Town Council for review and approval. So I believe the parts of this housing production plan are available on the website, but it is really our opportunity as a town to identify our priorities regarding housing and ways, strategies that we can try to meet those goals. The second thing, this weekend, starting tomorrow, is the Mass Municipal Association up in Boston, and there will be 2 opportunities to meet with our fellow, actually, elected officials from other towns on the Cape and Islands. One tomorrow morning at 11, we'll be meeting with our new Lieutenant Governor, Kim Driscoll, and the specific focus will be on the DEP regulations. So there's an opportunity to share some concerns with her then. And then at 5 o'clock, there'll be the regular meeting of the Cape and Islands Municipal Leadership Association. I think everyone should have received that information. Please let me know if you haven't, but it's a good idea to be able to attend. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Schnapp. Councilor Rapkassetti, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Bear with me. I have a little bit of laryngitis here. I've been, as liaison to the Barnstable Historical Commission, I've been asked to recognize 2 folks that have received the Preservation Award this year from the BHC. And one, as you know, is Marina Atsalis, and her longstanding honorable presence on that commission was recognized by the BHC. But also from his home on Pleasant Street in Hyannis, Dominic Alessandra has led a sometimes lonely crusade to preserve the maritime history of Sea Captain's Road in Hyannis, and whether through free tours of his own extensive historical collections at the Captain Allen Kroll homestead, or his advocacy for restoring and preserving the homes of the village's globe-spanning seamen, he's devoted countless hours to connecting villagers to his heritage, to our heritage. So with all of his efforts, without the benefit of foundation grants or other funding, he's labored to maintain the history of Pleasant Street as a gateway to Hyannis Harbor, and for that, he's being recognized by the Barnstable Historical Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Epkerson. Any other announcements on this side? Anybody on this side? I would just like to announce the Marston's Hills Village Association is back with their ham and bean supper, and it's a can't miss event, and it's probably the best deal in town. It's Saturday, January 28th, 2023, and I have to get used to saying that. It's a $10 suggested donation. Its seating will be from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Takeout is available, and the location is Liberty Hall in the Village of Marston's Mills, and all proceeds go to the Marston's Mills Village Association Scholarship Fund for seniors that live, seniors in high school, no matter what high school you go to, that reside in the Village of Marston's Mills. There'll also be a 50-50 raffle, and just to give you an idea, the menu, it is obviously ham and beans, but it's that goes without saying, but it's macaroni and cheese. It's also coleslaw and cornbread and, drinks. And yes, thank you. I knew I was forgetting something. Homemade applesauce made from the Marston's Mills Village Church. They have a applesauce making party that provides the applesauce for this event. So, and it is to die for. So thank you for helping me remember that. So any other announcements? Hope to see you there again, the 28th from 4 to 6. Okay, not seeing any. I just want to take this time to, it's an annual performance evaluation for our town manager, and to no surprise, the evaluations are made by the councilors individually and turned into our assistant, Cynthia Lovell, and she combines the scores, and to meet expectations is a rating of 3. To exceed expectations is a rating of 4, and outstanding would be a 5. And so after all the scores were tallied, our town manager performance evaluation, our town manager scored a 4.8. So congratulations, Town Manager Els. And to your staff, because I know you'd be the first person to say it's a team effort. So I appreciate that. And Assistant Town Manager Andy Clyburn, also congratulations to you as well. There's nobody who works closer, obviously, than yourself. So thank you for that. And I just want to take the time to make that announcement. So any other communications from the council? Okay. Right now, I would let's take a 5-minute break before we start into the orders of the day and finance workshop. 5 minutes. I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Barnstable Town Council meeting on January 19th, 2023. And again, Happy New Year, and thank you for joining us. Moving on into the orders of the day. Councilor Steinhilber, please, if you could, item number 2023-068.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is under new business, item 2023-068, authorizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Children and Families to provide police detail services. I'd like to refer this to a second read on February 2nd, 2023. Oh, this is from last time. So I'll just say as read.
Thank you.
Second.
And so we have a first and a second, and again, we're referring to a second reading on the 2nd of February. So if we can signify approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? It passes. Council Starr, please, item number 2023-069.
Thank you. This is an appropriation order in the amount of $125,000 in community preservation, historic preservation funds for Phase 3 exterior access project at the old Colonial Courthouse, 3046 Main Street, Barnstable Village. Referred to a public hearing. This is number 2023-069.
Second.
First and a second, and same type of thing. This is referring to a public hearing, so please signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any against? Any abstentions? Not seeing any. That passes as well. Councilor Clark, please, if you could, item number 2023-070.
Thank you, President Levesque. Agenda item 2023-070, approving the conservation restriction between the Barnstable Land Trust, Grantor, and the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust, Grantee, for the following parcels: map 187, parcel 079, lot 002, 0 Beech Leaf Island Road, 0.61 acres. Map 187, parcel 080, lot 002, 0 Beech Leaf Island Road, 0.53 acres. Map 187, parcel 034, 0 South Main Street, 2.0 acres. Map 186, parcel 092, lot 0, 0 Beech Leaf Island Road, 17.2 acres. Map 186, parcel 086, lot 0, 0 Bay Lane, 1.16 acres, and map 186, parcel 088, lot 002, 0 Thornberry Road, 0.91 acres. This may be acted upon requiring a majority vote.
We have a first and a second, and we also have Assistant Town Attorney Kate Conley here for the rationale, please. And also want to welcome Barnstable Land Trust Director Jenna Milkman is also in the audience.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Vice President, members of the council. Kate Connolly, Assistant Town Attorney. This item, 2023-070, was before the council in its slightly different format in December of 2021 and was approved by the council for a conservation restriction on most of these parcels, and I will defer to Janet Milkman to describe the additional parcel that was added in the time period from when it was first submitted to the state and is still with the state. They had the opportunity, the private parties, to add some property. It's important to note that council is required to approve this under the state statute that governs conservation restrictions, which is Chapter 184, Sections 31 through 33, even though the town is not a party to this in any way. We're not purchasing or otherwise acquiring the property. There's no, we're not holding the conservation restriction, and there's no funding, CPC or otherwise, going for the project. So this is a restriction on property that was actually conveyed recently, December 22 of 2022. It's a preservation of unbuildable upland and wetland known historically as the Great Cedar Swamp in Centerville. It will enhance the nearby 10-acre woodland donated to the town by the Sylvia family for outdoor education at the Centerville Elementary School. It will also preserve important wildlife habitat and protect freshwater wetlands. The land is important to protect the plant and animal habitat, public access and recreation, and to protect forested open space and linked to other conservation land. It's consistent with the town's open space policy that was adopted in 1981 and has a number of public benefits and conservation and other environmental benefits for the town. As I noted, it was approved by the council prior to the additional acreage being added in 2021, and the Barnstable Land Trust is working with the Compact of Cape Cod to enforce the restriction once this is preserved. And I don't know if Janet, you want to come up in case there are any questions?
Thank you very much for the rationale and the update. Any questions for Councilor Starr, please?
Thank you. So who owns the conservation restriction? Is that the right way to say that?
Well, the property is owned, and I believe the date that I gave, if that was correct, the property was sold from the Sylvia family. Donated from the Sylvia family. And this may be factual stuff that's better for Janet to answer, but you can't have the same party own property and hold the restriction. So the two nonprofits are going to work together. One owns it and the other will hold the restriction.
So who owns it?
Barnstable Land Trust
Okay.
owns it now,
Okay.
as of December.
And they will do the conservation. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Starr. Councilor Atsalis, please.
Real quick. So on October 6, 2021, Janet invited me on a tour of this land. And I have to tell you, for living in this town all my life and living in Centerville, I never knew this was there. And when she took me through, it was truly an amazing spot. It's going to be great for the community, great for the children. I'm going to volunteer Janet right now. I didn't tell her I was doing this, but if anyone does want a tour, I'm sure Janet will be happy to show you, because without Janet's help, you probably wouldn't find how to get in there in the first place. So, but it is really amazing. But once you get in there, it's accessible. There's paths. There's a boardwalk, but it's pretty magical. So, if I may use that word, magical. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Atsalis. That was magical. Any questions? A little levity. Any, okay. Very good. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. So without any further discussion, let me just go back. So this is also a majority vote, so just if there's no further discussion, if you can signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? It passes. Thank you, and thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Janet. Appreciate it.
And maybe I look forward to getting that magical tour. Moving forward to the next item of new business, Madam Vice President, please, if you could. Yeah, 2023-071.
Yes, this is, it's a new season for the Appointments Committee. This is item 2023-071, approval of the appointments to the Appointments Committee. That the Town Council does hereby approve the Town Council President's appointments of Councilors Nicholas Atsalis, Jeffrey Mendes, Paula Schnepp, Tracy Shaughnessy, and Gordon Starr as members of the Standing Appointments Committee of the Town Council as written.
First and second, any discussion? Okay. Not seeing any. It's again majority vote, so if you could signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes. Thank you, and thank you for all who volunteered, and appreciate those who are willing to serve. Thank you. Okay, so that is our last official agenda item, but we do have a workshop with our Director of Financing and our Town Manager, a financial update on a comprehensive wastewater management plan. Director Mark Milne. I think it goes without saying that this will be on the website, and it's already been forwarded to the council.
Thank you. Good evening again, councilors. Mark Milne, Director of Finance, Town of Barnstable. As the town manager said earlier this evening, we've been taking a look at this plan from multiple angles in 5-year increments, regulatory, technical, and here we are this evening presenting to you the financial angle for the next 5 years and what we're looking at. Fundamental points included that we'll cover tonight are that we're looking at close to $300 million in project costs over the next 5 years. That's what was submitted. Actually, it's $300 million plus we have one project we're still waiting for a number based on an alternative study that's currently underway. The projected annual service on that is almost $10 million. Current resources can provide for about $2.3 million of that debt service, leaving us a funding shortfall of $7.6 million. Our recommendation is to fund that with a debt exclusion override to cover that shortfall. The annual tax bill impact on the median residential assessed value is $260 a year, or about $22 monthly. And that tax bill impact could be offset completely from any homeowners that qualify for the residential exemption by increasing that residential exemption percentage. As you know, we've been coming before the town council for a period of time now over the past several years, updating you on the financial status of this program. Here's the multiple dates that we've been before you. We will continue to come forward on a regular basis and provide you updates on this plan as we proceed. Now I'd like to get into reviewing the existing resources that we've created for this program. To date, we've dedicated 100% of the meals tax that we collect locally to this program, 1/3 of our local rooms tax on traditional lodging, and 100% on vacation rentals or short-term rentals. The Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund has been created, which is an additional 2.75% tax on all types of lodging, both traditional and vacation rentals. So that's in existence now for about 3 years. We are committed to allocating property tax growth of $750,000 a year from our new construction from the general fund. This is general fund revenue that we're going to dedicate to the capital program, specifically to this program. And that'll get us to $3.75 million annually by year 5, committed to this program from general fund taxation. And of course, you know, we've adopted a sewer assessment ordinance, which is capped at $10,000 per dwelling unit. So looking at the historical performance on our meals and rooms tax, we are now generating about $4.8 million a year from those 3 sources of taxes. We had a couple of years there that they were significantly impacted by the pandemic, but now that we're back into normal times, we can anticipate about $4.8 to $5 million a year is what we're projecting from those revenue sources. Of course, subject to economic fluctuations. These are very volatile types of taxes which are impacted by those economic conditions. For the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, they've generated about $60 million to date since their existence. Some income from those investments on that revenue that's been generated. They transferred out $13.7 million in year 1 for subsidies. They transferred out $1.3 million for pre-existing debt, which Barnstable receives some funding for. And they transferred out $16.3 million for year 2 subsidies, leaving them with a balance of about $30 million today. The table on the right shows you what they project to generate in revenue from this funding source. Significant amount of revenue, but when you compare it to the project costs that we're looking at Cape-wide, it's not much when you look at it from that perspective. So it's not the silver bullet to fund this program, but it helps a little. These are the town of Barnstable's subsidies awarded to date from the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund. To date, we've been fortunate to receive 25% subsidies on our projects. Don't expect those subsidies to be that high going in the future because more and more communities will be submitting projects for subsidies, and with $22 million of annual revenue, they're not going to be able to continue to provide 25% subsidies going forward. Here's our new top property tax growth I mentioned earlier. Again, $750,000 for the next 5 years. This is a majority of what we generate in new property tax growth. Normally, this would go to funding the annual operating budget increases, but we're committing some money to this program. And we need to generate about $106 million in new building growth every year to generate that amount of new property tax. So we think we can do it. We've been doing it for the past several years. We've generated a little bit more than $1 million for the past 2 years. So we think $750,000 is attainable. And of course, the sewer assessment is now in effect. Our first assessments we anticipate issuing will be at the completion of the Strawberry Hill Road project. Approximately 230 properties will be assessed as they will have the ability to connect to that line. You do not receive an assessment until you have the ability to connect to the public sewer system. So we'll have a functional line. They'll be able to connect. They'll be able to utilize that line. The assessments, however, for that line are expected to be well below the $10,000 cap because the cost of that trunk line, being a main trunk line, we have to allocate out to all properties that we anticipate that will ultimately be served by that main trunk line, and that's over 2,500 properties. So these assessments will be significantly below $10,000. And we don't expect a lot of revenue from sewer assessments until we get out into the neighborhoods, so it's going to be a few years before we see any considerable sewer assessment revenue. So how do we finance all of these design and construction costs that we're looking at over the next 5 years? The way we do it is through construction loans. We have to borrow the money. Obviously, we don't have $300 million of cash laying around to pay for this, so we have to borrow it and pay it back over multiple years. So if our project gets listed under the Department of Environmental Protection's annual intended use plan, we can finance that through the state revolving loan fund at much more favorable interest rates than the traditional bond market. And so we submit every year our projects for this program to DEP to try to get them listed. We're competing against every other city and town and other special district in Massachusetts for the funding through this program. So we're not guaranteed to get listed on their intended use plan. If we don't get listed, we can't get subsidies. And we're going to have to go to the traditional borrowing market to finance that. Again, only projects listed on the IUP are eligible for the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidies. However, disadvantaged communities are eligible for an additional state revolving loan fund subsidy based on their tiers. They have 3 tiers. Barnstable is in Tier 1, so we do receive a 3.3% subsidy if we can borrow through the state revolving loan fund for our project. So in addition to the Cape and Island Protection Fund subsidy, we can get a subsidy from the Mass Clean Water Trust and the state revolving loan fund of 3.3% based on our tier. Bill funds, or bipartisan infrastructure law funds, were provided to the state revolving loan program, and that provided us with a 7.5% additional subsidy for the projects that were listed on the 2021 IUP, and that totaled about $2.4 million for Barnstable. Let me be clear, not a lot of money from the federal relief acts, whether it's bipartisan infrastructure bill or ARPA. There aren't direct grants coming to communities to help with this type of infrastructure. It's all being directed to the state revolving loan funds. So we have to borrow the money and we get principal subsidies on our loans. That's it. We're not getting direct grants. We need more money to fund this program from federal and state agencies, and we should be advocating for more federal and state direct grant funding, not putting it through state revolving loan funds, because when they do that, we have to compete with everybody else. And it just gives the state revolving loan folks more opportunity to spread the money around greater and award more projects and not specifically deal with this region's environmental issues. Again, if we can't get it listed on DEP's intended use plan, we have to finance it through the traditional methods, which is the municipal bond market, and interest rates in the municipal bond market have more than doubled since our last bond issue. Because of the economic conditions and what's happening at the federal level with the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, that affects our borrowing rates. This is how the State Revolving Loan Fund works. The Environmental Protection Agency provides state governments a capitalization grant to get these revolving loan funds going. The states oftentimes match those funds, not dollar for dollar, but they'll put some skin in the game as well. The state revolving loan fund then goes out and issues bonds and receives those bond proceeds from the bondholders, and then they make disbursements out to communities in the form of loans, so that those communities can pay their invoices to the contractors and vendors for these projects. Then the community has to pay the loan back to the state revolving loan fund, and the state revolving loan fund then repays their bond to their bondholders. So it's a big cycle that goes around, a lot of money changing hands through these revolving loan programs, a lot of administrative costs associated with that. So more specifically for this program, they provide low-interest loan options for clean water. It's not just clean water, but it's drinking water, storm water, and green infrastructure. So we're competing not only with other communities for their sewer projects, but their water projects, their stormwater projects, and their green infrastructure projects. They do provide 0% interim loans to assist communities with cash flow during construction. The design cost, and in some cases, our design costs are considerable on some of these larger projects. We could be spending $3 to $4 million on design costs alone. Those aren't eligible to be borrowed through the state revolving loan fund. We either have to pay cash for design costs or borrow through the traditional borrowing markets. Once the interim loan, eventually the interim loan gets converted to a long-term loan when the project is at or near completion, and the typical loan rate is 2% through the state revolving loan fund, 1.5% for housing choice communities, which Barnstable is, and 0% for wastewater nutrient management projects, which many of our sewer projects are addressed. They're intended to address wastewater nutrient management. So they could be eligible for 0% loans, but you've seen this before. There are 5 criteria to qualify for a 0% loan. We meet 4 out of 5. The last one is flow neutral land use controls. And we'll be having more conversations about that in the future. Council President Levesque, I think we talked about this the other day. We're going to schedule a workshop to talk more about this in the future. Here's an example of the financial benefit of the 0% loan to the trust. You can see that you could save considerable amount of interest over traditional borrowing, which rates are around 4% right now. We would incur about $15 million in interest costs on a $35 million borrowing, or $31 million after principal subsidy. Housing choice, if it was eligible for borrowing through the state revolving loan fund, we would incur about $5 million in interest costs at 1.5%, assuming a 20-year loan. So that's just an example of the financial benefit of that 0% loan, but that's not the only consideration when thinking about adopting a flow-neutral policy. It's not just a financial consideration. So here are the projected program cash flows. For the next 5 years, we're looking at, again, $293 million in projects. Effluent disposal alternatives is to be determined. We have a study ongoing right now providing us which will result in some alternatives to choose from, and then we'll have a better idea as to what those alternatives will cost. The amounts highlighted in green are the design costs that we intend on having to pay cash for. The amounts highlighted in blue are what we would anticipate borrowing for. And here's an example of what the loan payments on those borrowings would look like. So in FY24 through FY28, we're assuming, these are just assumptions now, these can change. We're looking at, we applied a 10% Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund subsidy against that loan amount that we authorized, a 3.3% principal forgiveness from the Mass Clean Water Trust, leaving us with a net loan amount, and we're assuming that we borrow that over 30 years at around 2.4%. We're using a blended interest rate here because, again, we're not going to be able to borrow everything through the trust. We don't anticipate every one of these projects is going to make the list. So we're just using a blended interest rate here to show what the approximate cost would be on these loan payments. And so the first loan is $1,068,000. The next loan's $4.5 million, and so on. To eventually, they total up almost $10 million by the time you get to that fifth loan in fiscal year 2028. So again, that's $9.9 million, over $9.9 million a year in annual debt service for 30 years. And this is just for the next 5-year phase. we'll have to be reevaluating this every single year. We'll drop 1 year, add another year, take another look at it, come back to you with a presentation describing what the situation is. So here's the cash flow projection for this program. Again, we have our rooms tax on traditional lodging, local meals tax, short-term rental tax, that general fund contribution from new growth, and then the other resources, and that includes things like sewer assessments, investment income, and sewer utility rates. Again, we won't see any substantial revenue from that until we start building the system out and getting properties connected. We have, on a commitment side, we have project management. This is our in-house management of this program. We have a number of staff on board now. We have operating expenses to manage the implementation of this program, to oversee all these projects. And then we have our existing debt service payments for outstanding loans that we already have issued. We have authorized and unissued debt in here, which reflects the estimated borrowing on loan authorizations you have already approved for various projects like Strawberry Hill Road, Route 28 East. We haven't borrowed those funds yet, but we will, and these are what we anticipate the annual loan payments will be. And then you can see every year after that, we have another staggered loan payment that will come on the books as we issue new loans. Eventually, we're up to over $14 million a year in debt service, total commitments of $16 million a year between debt service and project management, and compare that to about $9 to $10 million in resources, and that's that funding gap. So this, by fiscal year 28, fiscal year 27, really, this fund's down to a zero balance without any additional infusion of revenue into it. If we were to exclude the debt service for the projects listed for in the FY25 CIP, 26 CIP, and 27 CIP here highlighted in green, that would allow this program to remain solvent with the existing resources that we have coming in. So that's our shortfall, about $7.6 million up above, highlighted in green under the total resources debt exclusion. If that equals those 3 loan payments by fiscal year 2028 and thereafter, that we would seek your authorization to pursue a debt exclusion to fund that. We're already committing over $7 million a year in revenue that could have gone to the general fund to fund operations. Looking at our general fund operations and seeing what we have for projected growth in those operations and the impact on services that we've been experiencing, we can't take any more away from the general fund than what we already have. That's $7.5 million that would have been directed to the operating budgets over the past several years, but it has been going to this program instead. So we're asking for your support for a debt exclusion. And this is what the impact would look like. Based on the FY23 residential tax levy of $125 million, which is about 89% of the tax levy, the residential share of such a debt exclusion on that side, of that size, would be estimated to be almost $6.8 million, and that would result in about 39-cent increase on the residential tax rate. And that equates to about $260 annually, or $22 a year. Down below, I show the impact of how one option that you consider to mitigate that impact on residential property owners who qualify for the residential exemption in town, if you chose to do so. By gradually increasing that residential exemption from 20 to 26%, you could completely mitigate the impact of that debt exclusion of that size for the median residential homeowners in town. So it's an option to think about. What is the debt exclusion? It is the authorization to add the debt service onto the tax levy after the Proposition 2.5, exempt from Proposition 2.5. You would do that for the life of the loan, similar to what was approved by this community a few years back for the Cape Cod Technical's new high school and our share of that annual debt service. It does not increase the town's levy limit nor become part of the base for calculating future levy limit increases. It's a fixed amount equal to the annual loan payments. And it may be presented to and approved by voters before or after the debt is authorized or issued. I would recommend that you present it to the voters before the debt is issued so that we know how we're going to pay it back. So multiple borrowings may be included in a single question. The procedures require a 2/3 vote of the town council to present the question to the electorate, and we think that will take, we would recommend 2 council readings in order to do that. It may be placed on a regular or special municipal election or a state biennial election ballot. The town clerk must receive written notice of the question being placed on the ballot at least 35 days before the date of election. We'll try to get it sooner to you if it's approved. And if it's added to the state ballot, the Secretary of State must be notified by the first Wednesday in August. The exact language, you must vote the exact language that's going to be placed on the ballot. The borrowing purpose in an exclusion question must describe the particular projects being funded. You're not voting a dollar number for debt service. You're voting, you're voting to ask the community to exclude the debt service on projects A, B, C, and D, and so forth. And again, it covers the amount of debt service, the amount of borrowing authorized or contemplated for the stated purpose, because you don't know what the actual loan payment's going to be until you issue it, until you receive all your subsidies. So you're asking for their permission to exclude the debt service, but you don't know exactly what that debt service is yet. So that's why the language is structured the way it is. So here's a sample ballot question. Shall the town of Barnstable be allowed to exempt provisions of Proposition 2.5 the amounts required to pay for the municipal or for the principal and related interest on bonds issued in order to, and you state the purpose or purposes for which the monies will be used? Long Pond Road, sewer construction, Strawberry Hole Road, sewer construction, and so forth. The benefits to this approach is it solidifies the funding for this program for the next 5 years, preserves our existing services to the community, and improves our budget flexibility. The more of your annual operating budget that you lock up into fixed payments like loan payments reduces your budget flexibility. But if you increase your revenue by a corresponding amount of your debt service that you're increasing, you maintain that budget flexibility, and that is viewed very favorably by bond rating agencies. So it's important for us to keep our borrowing rates down as much as possible for a massive public works program like this. And it shows those rating agencies that a community supports these financial obligations, and that's looked upon very favorably. And it provides for a more gradual increase in the tax levy, as these loans don't all come on the books at once. They'll be staggered over the years, so it'll be a staggered increase to the tax levy as those loans are issued. And these are the future eligible election dates. There are more elections that take place during this time period, specifically primaries, but we can't put a question on a primary ballot. It has to either go on a general election. So we have November 7th, which is the annual town, which is the town election. We have November 5th, 2024, which is the presidential election, or a special election date could be scheduled at any time, similar to what Cape Cod Tech did for their vote. I think they had it conducted in September. So in summary, debt exclusion vote we recommend should take place before the contracts are awarded on those fiscal year 2025 construction projects. It'd be good to know if we have the community support to pay those through a debt exclusion. If we go forward with those projects without the answer as to how we're going to pay it back, then that's going to significantly change our budget development for fiscal year 25 for both the operating and capital side of the budgets. And again, this only addresses the next 5 years. We may need additional resources to fund the next 5-year phase. But as Town Manager Ellis said earlier this evening, technology can change, regulations can change, financial subsidies, more financial subsidies may become available if we can advocate with our federal and state legislators to provide more direct grants for this type of program. That's really what we need. Loan subsidies are good, but they don't pay a significant portion of this program. It's all being placed on the backs of the local community. Concludes my comments. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Director Milne. Very thorough presentation. Any questions from this side of the room? Councilor Lutke, please.
Yeah, I'd be curious, you mentioned grants several times. Why aren't we getting grants? Are we asking for them and being rejected, or the grants don't exist, or what's behind the problem with the grants?
They don't exist anymore. Back in the 80s, the federal government used to fund like 90% of the construction of sewer systems across the country, but they have transitioned to providing all their grant revenue to capitalization grants for state revolving loan funds. They don't do direct grants, with the exception to small communities. So you may have read a few years ago, Chatham received a direct grant from the USDA, I believe it was, for one of their sewer projects. Barnstable doesn't qualify for those types of grants. We're too large. It's for smaller communities. So those grants don't exist currently. So the best thing we could do is to continue to advocate for reinstalling a grant program like that that provides direct grants to communities for sewer infrastructure, to create sewer infrastructure.
Are we advocating for that?
We have been. We have talked to our legislative delegation, and we're, it's not getting any traction. Any help any of you could provide in that manner would be fantastic. But we need to approach this on a regional basis collectively together is the best way to do it, not just one person.
Okay, and the other question was about the IUP, and it's curious to me, why wouldn't you get the IUP? It sounds like you pretty much can get it, but you seem there was some jeopardy there. Why wouldn't you get it?
In 2022, I think they had over 400 projects submitted. The Mass Clean Water Trust, which manages the State Revolving Loan Fund, can't afford to fund all those projects. So they have criteria that they've established to rate those projects. They get together, the regional managers get together, they score these projects, and then they create a list. And I think maybe 80 or 90 of those projects got approved on the last list out of 300 or 400. So they have a funding limitation. So that's, you're not going to necessarily get your projects funded through them because of their limited resources.
Okay, and the last thing, I don't know if it's self-evident, but how long does this override last? 5 years? I mean,
it's as long as the loan payment. So if we amortize the loan over 20 years, it's 20 years. If we amortize the loans over 30 years, it's 30 years. It lasts as long as the loan.
okay, so that would be in the language to the voters. They would know how long.
Yes.
And it has to be tied to the property assessments? It can't be spread out to everybody equally?
No. No, it becomes part of the tax levy, and then the tax levy gets distributed based on assessed valuation.
Okay.
Great questions, Councilor Lutke. Any other questions from this side? Councilor Schnapp, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mark, could you bring up the slide that would best show what projects would actually be described in the debt exclusion language?
These projects here highlighted in blue, with the exception of the 2024, because we have existing resources that can manage the loan payment associated with the PCW route sewer expansion, or Park City Wind route sewer expansion. So 2024, we can finance. We can finance with existing resources. So it's the blue projects, the projects highlighted in blue in 25, 26, and 27. And again, by 28, we have enough resources projected to not have to put those projects on a debt exclusion. So we're looking at Route 28 West sewer expansion, nitrogen removal improvements at the water pollution control facility, the headworks improvements out there, the Finney's Lane sewer expansion, Old Craigville Road, Long Beach, Old Yarmouth Road, Great Marsh, Osterville Woods, and then Chute Flying Hill Road, South County Road, and Long Pond area. So it'd be a dozen projects that we would be asking for. You could go back to the voters and put one project at a time if you wanted to, but that creates voter fatigue.
Yeah.
You got to lump them together as a group, and you would list, the question would specify, these are the projects, and then we would provide an estimate of what the cost is, and not in the vote itself before the voters,
Right.
but the supporting materials that are provided to the electorate would describe what the annual debt service is estimated to be, what the subsidies we could potentially receive, and so forth, so that they are educated about what it all means. But they're not voting a loan amount, they're voting the project itself that'll be excluded that the debt service for will be excluded on the tax levy.
Okay. And if some reason another project comes up during that period, it couldn't be funded through that debt exclusion? It's only-
Most likely not,
Yeah.
no, because we didn't specify it in the vote that went before the
Okay.
voters, yes, that's right.
All right. Thank you.
I have one quick question. So the intended use plan, do you have to apply for each project? Is each project, did they consider them differently because they fit different criteria?
Yes.
Some of them could be approved and some of them couldn't? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
One on this side. Council Clark, please.
Thank you very much, President Levesque, and thank you, Mark, for your comprehensive presentation. On page 7, you have Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund, and the table on the right, you have decreasing revenue growth. I understand that doesn't necessarily mean that the revenue is shrinking, but the growth is shrinking. Why do you project in 2027 as minus 0.14?
These are projections that were prepared by the Cape and Islands Water Protection Fund's consultant. PFM Associates, I think, was the group that did it, but that's their, I don't know the reason why, unless they're projecting, there's some slowdown in the economy, being conservative.
Okay. I have another question.
Yes, please.
Where are we on the payout for the bond for the Upper Cape Tech School?
This is the third year. That was a 25-year loan. 23 was a third year, so they have another 22 years to go.
So asking the voters to pay on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments, questions on this side? Madam Vice President?
So thank you for putting the cost first in your presentation. I think it's important that, because somewhere through 30 slides, it gets a little dizzying. So I just want to go back to that. The median cost, the cost for a median household, median assessed value is about $260 a year based upon your projections,
Yes.
which is $22 a month. So I just want to keep that in perspective as we move forward with these conversations. Can it change? Yeah, it can change. But that's what we're projecting right now. And I think that is a very important message because it's incumbent upon us to sewer. It's a very important message that we attach that dollar as long as we know that dollar value, as long as we know that that's the most accurate number we have, and we get that out to the people. Because I think that, as this iterative path happens here, we really need to be honest about what we're burdening our taxpayers with and what will happen if we don't. Yeah. And, that is a whole different and complicated conversation that looks like we lose things from, our services, senior center, HYCC, whatever it ends up being, and also our bays and estuaries and our lakes and ponds. And so the cost of doing nothing is too great. It's more than $22 a month if we lose our economy and we lose our services. So I just think that's the crux of the argument. And as we move forward, I think we should frame it that way, that right now we're talking $260 a year, $22 a month for a median assessed household. That's all. Thank you.
And property values will ultimately be affected. So we have to be concerned about that. People have generated quite a bit of property wealth down here. that could be significantly impacted if we lose our estuaries, lose our water quality, lose our tourism industry as a result of that, and so forth. It's just a snowball effect.
In the other way, your property value or the potential of your property value increasing with the sewer goes the other way, in a positive direction. So I just think these are all really important things we need to keep in scope because, as Councillor Clark pointed out, this is in addition to another debt exclusion that we're paying. And this is not going to be the last debt exclusion we're asking for likely on this particular issue. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Cullum. Any other questions, comments? Just want to say thanks again, and again, there'll be more talk in regards to, moving forward with this, where the responsibilities fall in regards to who is really going to be the sales force behind something like this. It's actually going to fall on the council. There'll be more explanation in regards to that in the coming days. To clarify that, especially for the new councilors, I think it's important that you understand that it really is the council's job to really be the most educated sales force in regards to what is real information, and agree or disagree on our residents, but we have to give them, and again, as Vice President Cullum had just said, honest information. Okay, this is something, and I think it's becoming more and more real to people because it isn't just about a saltwater ocean and it being out in the ocean somewhere. People are seeing it now in the lakes and ponds in their backyards, and it is affecting their ability to swim in their ponds at all, or in estuaries and things of that nature. So it is. I think people are seeing that. This has been before the council before. I have gotten a good amount of history lessons through Director Milne, Town Manager Els, Director Santos, and so there's a lot more information to be had in regards to this that needs to get, and I know myself, Council Cullum, we're getting educated, and as we do that, it's important to know that we will try to get that information to you as well. And again, this is an important thing. It's not, we don't really have a choice, and the longer we wait, the more expensive it becomes. But again, the idea, a lot of people, my constituents, and again, I don't think it's just a lot of information. This is a 5-year, we've been honest about that. This is a 5-year review. We have innovative alternatives. We have all kinds of new information. 5 years ago, we didn't, ARPA funds, bill funds, nothing like that was even an option. The Cape and Islands Water Resource Project, that was in its infancy. We didn't know what kind of subsidies would have come from that. And that's just an example. This could have happened, this debt exclusion, we were talking about maybe doing this 3 years ago and having this discussion in regards to that. We've been able to hold off in regards to that for this amount of time because of these other resources. So who knows what's around the corner, really. But at the same time, being that, again, having that accurate information, and again, these are estimates. So there is a little bit of faith, right, to a certain extent that people are going to have an understanding that. And again, I might get ribbed on about that word, but we're working hard to move forward and get the best information out as possible, and understanding that this will build. So you have the 5-year. We could get to that point. You're going to pay that for 30 years once we get that 5-year increment moved forward. If we pass this now, I think the information you gave me was it would first show up on somebody in 2026. So that's now 3 years in advance. Something would have to be, council would probably be very different. There's lots of moving parts here. And I think people, if you just ask for your patience and understanding that we're doing the best we can, there's a lot of hardworking people here in the council. It's a privilege to serve with such an educated council. And, in staff, and just really try to move forward. So just wanted to let people know that we're really working hard to get you the correct information. And please feel free to, I know anybody on this dais will be available to answer questions. We are residents, we are taxpayers, we carry the burden with you. So thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, yes, Councilor Starr, please.
Thank you. I was, in looking at going to the voters and asking for more money, my thought is that maybe we're supposed to be, this is an iterative process, and we're supposed to be looking at it every 5 years, that maybe we should start some kind of reinstitute the Water Quality Advisory Committee, or somehow get a public committee to start looking at the technical issues. I mean, just sort of, just to assuage the voters. I mean, if I was a voter, I'd want to know that we're pouring all this money in, but we're also, you know, we have a group of people, citizens, who are overseeing some kind of just reevaluation of systems. Does that make sense? So I'm just throwing that out there. So.
It's definitely in discussion, Councilor Starr, that we are talking about exactly what, you know, that's why this is really the start of the conversation and moving forward. Again, Council is leading residents and people in different discussions. Again, it's like the local comprehensive plan. We're going to have outreaches. We're going to go where people live. We have to educate people and to be able to give them the information they can to vote in the direction they're going to vote. And to say that if, you know, again, it's not an idle threat, that if we do not go forward, we do not have a choice. We're moving forward with the sewer project. If we do not get the funds to be able to do that, services will be cut. Now, again, we'll have to have another discussion in regards to really what that looks like, and that is, I know that's been a conversation with Mark Milne, and for leadership, between when Councilor Schnepp and I were leadership, and now continuing with Vice President Cullum and myself. So, again, working together to move forward and get as much information out to citizens. And so thank you for the suggestion. Any other? Councilor Shaughnessy.
I just want to say that, you know, with regard to Dr. Ward's comments tonight and the opt-out in the Cape Cod Times, I do think, and I understand why, and I can explain it, but I think for myself, whose precinct is entirely sewered, you know, Councilor Clark, Councilor Ludke, they have portions of their precincts that will never be sewered. So I feel like we need to have a sales point or two to help those of us out, because I get it, but, you know, that's what they're going to say is, well, I'm sewered. Why should I have to pay it all? So I feel like we need to come up with, you know, if we're talking about a sales pitch, we need to come up with an argument or two that can be used.
Or 12.
Right, for the people
Right.
who will never be sewered and for the people who are already sewered. So just
Understood. And that's what I was alluding to in regards to that, being informed and being able to give people information to make an educated decision.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Thank you, Councilor Shaughnessy. I'm in the same boat. Any other? Okay. Seeing it, thank you very much. It's strange to end the orders of the day with a workshop, but this is our last item of business for tonight. And without further ado, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second. Moved.
And so I would, if you signify your approval by raising your hand and saying aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Good night, everybody. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mark Milne. Thank you, Town Manager Els. Appreciate, and everybody else. Director Santos, shout out to you too as well. Thank you for being here.